Okay, so the topic tonight is Aikido the art of peace? So there is this little book, which many of you will be familiar with, called The Art of Peace.
Yes.
But in the Aikido world, there are lots of people who just say it was a mistranslation, and certainly for them, it's not about peace. So why is Aikido the art of peace? Who would like to offer something?
Quentin, I can start, if you don't mind, saying what was the concept and the phrase that motivated me mostly when I first began and deeply inspired me into this art. And it was something that really keeps me going until now. Whenever I go in a dojo that they are way far behind the principles of Aikido, and then this is a quote by O-sensei that really inspired me since the beginning. And I would like it's one phrase that really I find extremely inspiring. It's translated from Japanese, and it says that, well, of course, the phrase that Aiki is love, then it is possible to handle aggression with a smile. And then that the supreme challenge of a warrior is to turn an enemy's fearful wrath into harmless laughter. Not even ironic laughter, but harmless laughter. So I found this phrase extremely inspiring because a human being has to really search into the very depths of our soul and shadow to really meet this level of being that O-sensei is describing.
Yeah. Okay. Who else would like to offer something? Why is it the art of peace, or isn't it? Molly?
Well, it is the art of peace for me. Okay. Whether it's the art of peace by every practitioner is debatable. But the basic essence of O-sensei and what I understand to be his intention was just exactly that. It was to dissolve the false idea that we're separate. And if we're not separate, how do we kill each other? So for me, it's definitely an art of peace, and it's not always practiced that way. But again, I've had the fortune of having it practiced that way.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? David, has it always been the art of peace for you?
Yes, there's some very good examples of it. I think our style of Aikido at times can be overly can be at times a little brutal, and sometimes I do get can be a little bit annoyed by some of the tortured faces of the people I train with at times. Whereas I like to try and train with a smile on my face, which sometimes my teacher says, well, that's not very martial. I'm going, well, but it's quite disarming for people, so it's quite good. So I think it can be, and I think I always quote an example of we were on a course. It's actually a celebration of Master Noke in Paris, and we arrived at the steps underneath the Saint Sulpice, and there's two winding staircases, and we observed a number of people being harassed and annoyed by a number of hawkers and the bits and pieces who were basically every woman who walked up the stairs received some form of grief from these guys. So two of my friends were really interested in practicing their Aikido as they walked up the stairs, and they decided to walk up the stairs and hoping to get some sort of maybe a bit of grief there. They could then go and practice some Aikido techniques. And they were the only two women that walked up those stairs, and nobody went anywhere near them. They got to the top and they're actually quite frustrated. And I think that was just the way they carry themselves, the way their attitude, the bits and pieces. And I thought, wow, there's a wonderful example of how to diffuse a situation without doing anything as such or anything outwardly. So in many ways, yes, I think Aikido can be the art of peace, and demonstrated to be so.
Interesting. You said can be, not it is.
Yeah, because not everybody follows that methodology or understands understands maybe some of the background behind it. And I know my teacher sometimes talks about the sort of the idea of 10. So the tech gives you 9, you give 1 to add up to 10, and the sum of 10 can work quite well. And some people don't do that, and maybe like to go to 11 or 12 as Spinal Tap would do with the volume on their speaker. So yeah, I think it can be, and I think people sometimes forget what the art can be about, and more interested in physical prowess or injuring and hurting people. But yeah, so I think it can be, but it's not always practiced that way, that's for sure.
Okay. Judith, you've got your hand up. Did you want to offer something?
Yes, I'd like to say Aikido is the art of peace for me, and it's the art of peace for all of us who want it to be and have peace and joy in our hearts.
Okay, good. Anyone else got anything else they want? Paul?
I'm totally with David, and I'm also with Judith. But if we have peace in our hearts, we don't need to practice. I think the reason it can be a road of practicing peace is it offers movements which we can do brutally as the attacker. So the defender has the opportunity to not be responding in kind. If the attacker is too nice, we learn to get along with our friends, which is hard, but it's our enemies we got to learn to get along with. So you need a bunch of nice enemies who will act the part, you son of a bitch. And then you get to practice not being triggered, if you wish.
Okay. So anybody else want to offer anything on that question?
I think the founder definitely saw it as the art of peace. He saw it as a way of reconciling the world, and it works in practice.
Okay, so is it Aikido then if people are not having that as a goal?
Yes.
Okay, why, Paul?
Because it looks like Aikido, sort of. And I don't have to waste time debating with everybody, only the ones I can win against.
Okay, I figure. So, okay, then if Aikido is, for many at least, is the art of peace, what is it that we do within the practice that makes it the art of peace? Here we are practicing a martial art. There seems to be a dichotomy between that and the idea of being peaceful. So what is it that Aikido offers that makes it congruent with an art of peace?
I think
Go ahead, Paul.
I think as it's usually taught, not much, because it's not explicit. I could never have understood much of what people say. I had to figure out mechanical ways that I could trigger my body, pull the switches, and then turn it peaceful when everything in me wanted to hit the sucker. So that's what I see missing, the explicitness that many people need to figure out what it's really about. The people who aren't explicit, maybe they don't need it, or maybe they're not interested in peace.
Okay, what about others? Molly, you were going to say something, I think. Nope, we're fine. Linda, yep. Linda, you're on.
Thank you. Yeah, the way I see it as the way I try to explain how the embodied practice works is in the sense of affirmations. We believe what comes out of our mouths. When we say, I am a peaceful person, whatever, we believe that. But on a much deeper level, we believe what we do. And so when we physically practice, not responding with tension, not responding with a harder attack, when we practice accepting something and finding a way to resolve it that isn't this sort of a response, we become that through our repeated practice of it. So we become more peaceful people by practicing that embodied response.
Okay, I have a lot of affinity with that viewpoint. However, a lot of people don't seem to be that peaceful, even though they're practicing receiving and accepting and blending. So why is there a disconnect for some? Do you think?
I think some people come into any martial art with such a preconception about this is about fighting. It's about fighting better, about dominating. And it can take a very long time to get past that, you know, to finally see, oh, wait a minute, there's something else here. There's something that my teacher always says that we use. Oh my gosh, now I'm going to forget the word. Ruthless compassion. He uses the term ruthless compassion. And the way I heard that, and he used to be an English teacher, he doesn't use language carelessly. But the way I heard it is like he's saying that backwards. He means like compassionate ruthlessness. You know, like be a badass, but in a way that, you know, uses the least force. And I finally learned that he actually meant it the way he's saying it. Took me a few years. The example that he gives is like if you have a child who's throwing a fit or, you know, being out of control, and you need to stop that. You need to stop them from running in the road, or you need to, whatever it is, you need to be ruthless about that. You know, oh, okay, I'll let you run in the road. That might be like a pacifist way of dealing with it. But you need to be ruthless in that, in your expression of compassion. And it took me a few years to get that. I thought it meant like being not quite as violent as you might be. And it really slow to sink in. But I think for a lot of people, they're still on that waiting for it to sink in part.
Notice that earlier in your sentences, you expressed a negative feeling about domination. And you just said the domination done compassionately is good.
Yeah. It's not for the goal of like, I'm going to show my kid they can't get away with anything. I'm going to stop them. It's not like dominating for the of being better than and one-upping some, you know, pounding them. But
it's loving.
But when you deal with someone physically in a way that stops them, you don't need to do it from a perspective that I really fought with that at the beginning as well. And I was at the same time working on training my very large, very friendly and sort of out of control horse. And the only thing I could...
It's the lioness syndrome, isn't it? The lioness dealing with the lion cub by saying this isn't safe to do, so you will be disciplined till you learn that's not safe.
Yeah, what finally, the vision that finally had to come into my mind, because I was thinking you had to be like mean, you have to be, you know, get after them and make them, you know, make them do what you want. And I didn't like that. I couldn't come up with that energy without bringing anger or meanness with it. And the image that finally came to me was a veterinary technician. If you've ever watched them deal with an animal that's, you know, they need to stop them. They need to control them and stop them, but it's done in an entirely loving way. It doesn't come in any way from anger. So you're right, Paul, there's that need to, it's a need to control someone for their own good or for the good, how things come out. But it's not like I'm going to show this little cat who's boss. You know, it doesn't come from that place.
If you sense your body, you notice that anger and meanness tighten your body. So if you really want to hit somebody hard, you've got to love them.
You talk about you know, that love without power is useless and power without love is wicked, or something like that. And it seems to me that what we're aiming for is compassionate power. Compassionate power, you have the ability to irimi and be very direct and take very decisive action, or to be very sensitive and caring and nurturing if that's the appropriate thing to do. And it's being able to dial in to what's required at the time and just do it.
Quentin, you're hearing it the same way I was, in this case, compassionate power. If you think of it as powerful compassion, try that on.
But I think that the same.
So it's not, you said it was ruthless. What was it?
Ruthless compassion.
Ruthless passion.
Ruthless compassion.
Compassion. Yes. No, I don't see that phrase as compassionate power as quite the same. I think you can reverse it much more easily, and they mean much the same thing. But
Kind of. In one case, it's ruthlessness moderated by compassion.
Yeah.
And in the other case, it's power moderated by compassion, instead of compassion enhanced by power.
Yeah, I think my point was that you don't always have to be ruthless. I think you have to be decisive in the sense that you have to act in the moment and do the right thing. So you have to be decisive, but whether you're always ruthless, yes, there might be times for that. It's not quite the right word for me, but I know why he linked them, and it got you thinking. So it kind of did a job in a way.
Linda?
Joe, some time ago, you stuck your hand up.
Yes, I was thinking right in the beginning when I started training Aikido, I got back home once and then I told my ex-partner, if we had a couples crisis one day, we wouldn't go to couples therapy, we wouldn't go to Aikido. And it was for me my first peaceful path that I could see. But nowadays, I think it's beyond that. It's not about only conflict, but how do we keep going on that? So kind of today we're talking about this Aikido, the art of peace. I could keep talking on that next week, and just, it's not about, okay, we're dealing this right now, and then we get rid of this, and then we go to the next thing later. Kind of, how can we continue working on that, trying to harmonize and trying to make this peace work, because we are not having some peace over that. So I don't know, it's part of this work. How can I be peaceful just because we didn't solve the problem today in our first conversation, or just like practicing the same technique?
Yes.
I think it's maybe about that.
Yeah.
Not being in a rush, maybe.
Yeah. So you're really saying it's a journey, and maybe it's a journey we never quite complete, because that's the nature of humanity. Things get you upset at times. Okay, so where does this piece begin then?
Inside of me. I had to work with me, and then I just have to be peaceful. Even if I peaceful with the situation, it's okay. I won't get any positive result right now. Yeah. But I might be working on that and then settling down. Just need to wait and slow down. Maybe not being that really urgent need to get everything just resolved right now.
It's very hard to be peaceful with others if you don't have any inner peace.
Yeah. I just remember, just like in the beginning, I just got, okay, some days I was working with Yonkyo Yonkyo that I hated, just terrible. And then, oh my God, I just want to get rid of that, or I want to get rid of Kotegaishi because it's hurting something. Not that I got injured about that, but it wasn't a pleasant technique to work on. So frequently I was practicing with this feeling of, okay, let me just practice about 5 minutes, and then I'll get rid of this, and then I'll get to the next technique that my teacher would offer. So it's not about that anymore. How can we work on this delicate and difficult wrist locks without just talking about that, and then developing this in a peaceful way that I can't enjoy it, I don't know, or learn another way to do this.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to I said, what is it about Aikido that promotes peace? But let me be a bit more focused and say, what is it about Aikido that promotes peace within?
You have to learn to control yourself, so before you can even attempt to control anyone else. So that internal control is the beginnings of peace.
Okay, I like the answer, but I'd like you to be a bit more explicit. What is it that helps you within Aikido to control yourself then? What do we practice that gives us personal control?
Yeah, I've been thinking all week about that fantastic quote from Mary Heine that we got last week, which turned everything on its head. And your object is not to overcome or beat or subdue someone, but to bring them round to a state of peace in a way.
Yeah.
And to get that mentality right, I think, is the beginning of it.
Okay, so that seems to me to be about mindset, and I think that's really critical. Molly, did you have something to say? Because you stuck your hand up briefly there.
I did. I find that, of course, it depends on who you're training with, but in the beginning of practice, if you're doing a Shinkokyu, or if you're doing a breath practice, or if you're doing any of those kinds of calming, connecting to self kinds of things, I think that that's a way of starting to be at peace. And again, it depends on who the teacher is, right? Whether you actually start with that as a focus, or whether you just, get up and go. I also think that my understanding of bowing, so if I'm walking in the dojo, I automatically, in fact, I even do this in my house. It's just sort of this automatic bow. And what I'm experiencing in that bow is just a shedding of anything that I'm bringing from back there that I would be bringing onto the mat. I'm just dropping it at the door and letting it stay out there while I come in with a sense of purpose to, again, practice being at peace with anybody that I come in contact with.
Yeah.
It's got to start here, though. It has to start with me.
Sure.
That at peaceness has to be something that I value and that I want to express.
Yes. So if we take the bowing as a sign of respect, it's kind of where we start the practice, where we finish the practice. It's where we start with a partner, etc., etc. And respect, I think it's hard to equate that with violence, at least. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying it lays a baseline that encourages us towards peace. You're less likely to hit someone you respect than someone you don't respect. And you mentioned we undertake certain key exercises like breathing and Shinkokyo, which make us feel more peaceful. So what is it within those exercises that does make us feel more peaceful and calm? What's the underlying principle that the teacher is trying to impart, do you think?
For me, there's a heaven and earth connection, if you will. I mean, there's that vital body that connects me to the core of the planet while I'm being sucked out into space. There's that that space, and there's also the posture changes. The posture gets to be more open and receptive through those kinds of practices. So if I was feeling at all contracted, well, now I've got oxygen all the way out to my fingertips and my toes.
Right. So again, it connects you with yourself, and it kind of connects you with the planet if you want. And again, I think that setting a baseline that makes it easier to be peaceful and respectful. And to answer your question, David, is bowing exclusive to Aikido? I really don't think it is. I think it's pretty universal, but I think, as I said, it's a baseline. It's not the key part of our practice that brings about peace. Does anyone else have it? I've got some thoughts on this, but why should I give it? What to you guys? What else is it that we do in Aikido that helps us feel peaceful? I mean, I think you've given some great examples, Molly, but I think there's more to it. I think there are other key things that we do that help us.
I have a couple of ideas. We always practice defending when somebody else attacks. We never practice going out to be aggressive and attack anyone.
Is that true? Because of course we have to be uke as well, and in uke, if you don't attack with intent, there's no point doing it. So we do simulate an attack.
This is true. Yes. Okay. When we're nagi, we don't practice going attacking people. But, okay, I see your point. And most people I know are careful not to hurt each other on the mat. And Bjorn teaches about not dominating in doing Aikido. And that's also an important thing to learn, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Although if we come back to Linda's comments earlier on, when we discussed domination.
Mm-hmm. I'm not in favour of letting little kids run out into the road and get run over.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think domination is a loaded emotional word. I prefer controlling a situation, and you could say there's elements of domination in that, but I don't think there has to be. To control the situation, you don't have to dominate it. Okay. Anyone else got any thoughts on what we practice? Yes, Steve.
Yeah. Well, I think it's based on the studies that we have been doing Tuesday night and part of last year, is working on the principle aspect to get all of your mind and body tuned in to what you're doing from the base outwards and upwards.
Yeah.
So that then brings Aikido. That's what makes it hard for people. It's taken me many years to just beginning to grasp some of it. And it's still a long way to go, but I find that the difference between a dojo and an Aikido dojo is that you walk into an Aikido dojo and it's usually very light, relaxed. You're going to a judo dojo or whatever, and there's a lot of heavy stuff about in the air, you know, it's very different. And that's the different, the relaxation is there as soon as you bow yourself in. And then it brings the whole thing into one unit.
Yeah. So we're taught, well, within key society, and it's something that I still do within my dojo. We have these 4 principles of coordinating mind and body.
Yeah.
You know, relaxation, I could say awareness rather than sending key, having one point, being centered, and it would be described as keeping weight underside or have a light posture, which means
and train with joyfulness, whatever that means.
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's true.
I don't. I'm just trying to think. Well, yes, but by the time you get to that, you know, you're going to make that happen. You never see it's unusual to find people who do not smile at some point.
Depends which dojo you go to. Apparently in David's dojo, smiling isn't the norm. But I totally support you, David, in saying that actually a smile is very disarming and very powerful.
Yeah.
And the things I just described about centering and relaxation, they don't necessarily bring peace, but they do bring an inner calmness. And again, when you have more control of yourself, you're far less likely to act out of anger, and it's much easier to be empathetic. And that, to me, is absolutely central to our Aikido practice. That we respect the person in front of us, we respect and accept the attack. We always try to put ourselves in our partner's place. We literally do that in so many techniques. And surely it's this embodiment of these ideas that hopefully translate into not only resolving a physical attack on the mat, but resolving conflict generally. Jamie,
if you don't love, you can't train.
Did you say that again?
If you don't love, you cannot train. I'm
not sure. I mean, I think it's love is such a key element to
Yes,
to
it's,
what we're seeking to have. But you can train. There are plenty of people who come along as angry folk. They may calm down over time, but as far as they're concerned, they're training. So I think you can train with it, but hopefully love makes the practice a little bit more positive.
Yes, that's really the answer to that.
Jamie, I sense you're itching to say something.
I'm listening all the time, everybody. Just kind of multitasking, don't want to distract you. Anyways, but I've been listening. I always love the topics, Quentin, so thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to say something a little different, and that is this. I think that, Aikido's got a wonderful ideal and idealistic philosophy, and which I think is great. I think we need that. We've got to at least have ideals, and we've got to have, I think, a philosophy that we can feel congruent with and that we're aspiring to and practicing for. And I think it, for me anyways, it's a lot better than other philosophies and other practices, right? So, and I think people self-select in a certain way. I mean, you choose Aikido because you're interested in peace or a more peaceful way of being. All that being said, I think with it, we all encounter, I don't know, not peacefulness, even violence, abuse in Aikido, as we do everywhere else, because people are people. So what I want to inject into the conversation, and this is my sort of psychologist, psychotherapist self, is that I think people still need to do personal growth work. And I say that as well to people who do spiritual practices, meditating alone. You can do spiritual bypass. You can do Aiki bypass. And that's a real problem. I've more recently come back to doing more psychotherapeutic work. I used to do it all the time, years ago. I mean, I kind of, my whole life for a couple decades when I was in San Francisco was my dojo at night and my sort of somatic psychotherapy practice by day. And interestingly, I've come back to doing more kind of psychotherapeutic and counseling work. And it just reminds me, not that I have really forgotten through the years, how important it is to do what you call therapeutic work, counseling work, personal growth work. But I mean, if you're going to have inner peace, you've got to resolve your issues. And that means childhood, that means stuff that happens today. You've got to have ways to deal with your emotions and just the ways that we all are. And every one of us has to do that. I think that's where we run into limitations. We've been talking a lot lately about, Hufo Chahakama or leadership issues. And, as a sensei who's great physically in Aikido, necessarily a great human being, or a peaceful, empowering, respectful leader a teacher that we'd like. And the answer is no, unfortunately. So I don't think that Aikido practice alone ensures that we're going to have inner peace. It certainly helps to breathe and center and ground and all of that. I'm all for it. I teach about it, writing about it. And I don't think it's quite enough. So, I'd like to toss that out there for people to talk about. I just really see that we need to do our own personal polishing work on a sort of, you can call it psychological level, I guess. And that that's a dimension that we can't leave out or that we can't bypass only through spiritual or Aikido kinds of practices. We also need that dimension of it.
I think you've segued us into the next bit in many ways. I just respond and say that I think you're absolutely right. But one question you could ask is, well, what's your purpose in Aikido? And if your purpose in Aikido is to perfect Aikido technique, then that aspect of self-development, it's not part of your plan, really. If it happens, it'll be a byproduct that you weren't expecting. My purpose in Aikido has always been self-development. And so it was always important for me to be able to use what I learned on the mat, off the mat. But I think you need a teacher to make that link between what your practice is and what its purpose is. And if people don't lay out the path as it could be, then it gets missed. I was going to then move into you, but you've introduced the next part, which was, okay, so we're doing all these useful things that could lead to self-development, that could lead to a path of peace. So how does that translate into your lives? So what is it that you do in Aikido that translates into your daily life? This is the question of the year, probably, in terms of where I'm going. I can see you thinking. I'm hoping someone's going to come up with an answer.
You can learn patience. So you're less likely to be angry with somebody in your daily life if they do something that might upset you.
Okay, talk a little bit more about how Aikido helps you to learn patience and how that has helped you be more patient in your day-to-day life, Judith.
Okay, well, how does Aikido help you to learn patience? I know that it does, and I only have some theories about how that it does that may be wrong. It's very difficult to learn in many ways, and we have to learn it carefully so as not to hurt each other. And I don't know why all of this helps us become more patient, but it often does. And I've seen it happen in many people.
Right.
And how has it helped in my daily life? Well, I worked as a teacher for many years, and I still do a bit of tutoring with some kids just for free on Zoom. But patience is very important when you're a teacher. And
do you think you're more patient because of your Aikido? That's the big question. Or is that just a quality you had anyway?
I've only got the memories of this life. So how can I say? I think I always was quite patient. And maybe one of the reasons I chose Aikido was because it helps to develop that.
Okay. Paul, you had something to say. You just need to unmute, of course.
Patience, peacefulness, all those words refer to the same body state. I think if you open and soften your body, which is necessary to do flowing Aikido techniques, that is what we mean by patience. If you have to sit there and wait for something for 4 hours, it's a waste of time. You work yourself up. You're not doing opening your body. Anytime you open and soften your body and have techniques to do so, then you do it in the Aikido defense techniques, and it constitutes a practice of peace. If you close your body and tighten and hit harder, or do a shianage that rips people's arms off, you can be very graceful and very psychopathic. That's not a technique for achieving peace. It isn't Aikido, it's your Aikido.
So for me, Paul, I don't want to blow smoke up your bottom, but you very much use what you've learned on the mat. It is your training, it's your laboratory, and you very much use it in everything you do.
Yes.
In your other practices off the mat and in your personal life. So was it the Aikido that drove you? I mean, was it just talk about that a little bit. When you start to make the connection.
The Aikido presented me with a series of puzzles. I couldn't be balanced. I couldn't do that. And I began to realize, the first time I realized it, I watched when people were grabbed and they looked down at the grab. And I said, you're losing balance, don't look down. So they didn't, and they still lost balance. Finally, I understood that they were thinking down. So then I started trying to even out my thought. And the farther I went with that, the smoother things got. And then that was the key. But it was that Rosetta Stone, from thought to key to balance.
Okay, so that works really well in your technique, or trying to teach technique on the mat. But how did that translate to something important off the mat?
Okay, if somebody comes to me and they're, well, let me think. I was teaching a seminar in Spain. This guy resented something we did. He said, I didn't pay to do this. I said, what are you doing with your tongue right now? And he said, oh my God, you're right. He was resenting that he wasn't spending his time learning peace. He was resenting it unpeacefully. All I had to do is say, use the tools.
Right.
I do it every time my body wants to do something that I don't want, so to speak.
Sure. So it gives you a measure of control over those maybe innate responses that you notice it now and you do something about it.
Yes, absolutely. But you don't have to. You can be brutal and do the same techniques. And karate, in classical karate, they talk about receiving, not blocking. They use the word uke. You receive the punch, you don't block it. That's sport karate.
Okay.
And they bow, and it's the same feeling.
Okay. So guys, Paul's given a response. What about the rest of you? How are you using what you learn on the mat? Are you using what you learn on the mat in your daily lives? And my answer, if the answer is David, you're shaking your head, my answer would be why? Why are you not using it?
Quentin, can I add something?
I'd love it if you did, Demetra.
Yeah. First of all, I shared what Jamie said, and then Paul Linden. Certainly, centering the body and do all kind this key preparation can help us feel more centered, but it certainly doesn't necessarily make one being less aggressive or more peaceful. And there's a very old Chinese saying that says when Shen is peaceful, Shen is the ideogram that represents the heart, not as an organ, but the heart spirit, the heart energy. They say that when Shen is harmonious, or when it's calm, the heart, then the qi, the qi, is also flowing and is also harmonious. So it seems to me that the base for all that is cultivating the Shen, cultivating the heart spirit, heart energy. That's where aggression begins, I think. Aggression does not begin in the mind, aggression begins in the heart, and then it translates into all kinds of thoughts. And I think it is very important in Aikido that before we start doing all kinds of techniques, that we first start to do some exercises, key exercises to soften the heart mind, and then to start working from another level of consciousness before we can even grab the wrist of somebody.
Yeah. Comes back to what Steve was saying about cultivating love in some ways.
Yes.
And I think all I would say is that if you talk about heart centers, to most people, the first time a student comes on the mat, they're going to have no clue what you're talking about. You know, because you've been working on Tai Chi for a while now, and Aikido as well. But so, yeah, the language might be different, but I totally empathize with what you're saying. What about others? How's it translating into your daily lives? And if not, why not?
Wow, I can't even imagine living without it. So I live on land where I'm with my husband, and then my daughter, her husband and grandchild, and my niece. So we're all in, 3 separate spaces, and we're all unique human beings. And I use it all the time in working things out with each other. How do you live together? How do you live together in harmony when there's a conflict about something? And how do you work with it? With my grandson. This is randori with him oftentimes, because not only has he discovered no, but he's also discovered why. And so I just stay present. I stay present for whatever, if I use the language, whatever the attack is, I just stay present.
Yeah.
When I'm moving through the world in a mobility device, whether it's powered or powered by me, my awareness has to be 360 degrees. I have to know where everything is, behind me and my sides, underneath, over. My awareness is huge. And that comes from my training in the Aikido, where way before uke ever comes to attack, I feel them. I feel them coming. I invite them coming. So it just seems that, you know, clearly for me, when I was upside down in the car for almost 2 hours, it was the generation of power from Aikido ways that had me alive.
Yeah. And what made you make progress is you were used to falling down and getting up and carrying
Yep.
on going.
Yep.
That was a pretty useful skill as well. And
Pretty useful.
I know you're really keen on your gardening too. And for me,
Yeah.
I'm really keen on my garden. And there's an example, Linda, of ruthless compassion. You know, I shape my garden. I'll pull out certain plants and I'll put them deep. You know, you're not staying, you're going. And, you know, so there's a bit of ruthless compassion going there to create this beautiful picture. Can you see, how do you relate to that, Molly? Gardening and Aikido.
Oh, well, you know, I think I said before, there's this photograph that recently Sensei Francis Takahashi sent me, and it's a photograph of O-Sensei just basically walking through the woods with his Jo. I embody that when I've got my circle hoe in my hand, you know, that is that thing. You talk about, I'm removing weeds, I'm cutting things way back so they can expand out. You're bringing them down to their structure, to their basic structure, so they can fill back out. To me, in Aikido, that's one of the things that we do with technique. Here's the skeleton of movement, and then here's the expansion that has the skeleton there, but is much broader than a technique.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Other folk? Hugh, you've been remarkably silent. I can't believe it.
That's what you pay me to do.
Is it? I remember now that bank balance is emptying.
Stay quiet. I think to answer your question about your most recent question about, you know, using it in every day, to me, one of the great benefits of trying to improve with Aikido is to create instant change. So what I like to explain to folks is that the center, we talked a lot about balance and centering and all this sort of thing, but the center of Aikido really is the breath. And so what I like to say is normal human beings, when they get agitated or shocked, angered, they breathe in. So, you know, if somebody jumps out at you in a dark night, you breathe in and your body tenses up and your weight goes up. And that's what most human beings do. But us lot in Aikido world do it the other way around, don't we? We learn to breathe out and to relax and to drop. Now that takes a lot of practice, and it doesn't always work on the mat. But taking what little that I can carry outside, I use that a lot in everyday life.
Can you give us an example?
Well, I mean, anything which, I mean, in one thing which I've done quite a lot of is maybe sort of giving a talk or something to people or students or whatever, at the university's public speaking and all this kind of thing. We all get, most people get quite nervous doing that. And so just before, it's just a snap of a finger, breathe out, drop the center, calm down, and radiate sort of good feelings out. And it pretty much works.
Yeah. So that's kind of a great simple example of being more at peace with yourself, so that you can perform effectively in whatever it is you're doing. Yeah. What about others?
I'd like to just share a little bit about Kia golf.
Sure.
Yeah, And I think it's pretty instructive, actually. You know, in golf, golfers are basically notorious for killing the ball, right? I mean, even if you don't golf, you've probably heard that, right? People try to kill the ball. And so it's exactly what we're talking about here. I pretty much created Ki Golf and teach it as a means to teach peace. And so it's like, you know, why do you kill the ball? First of all, it's a mindset. You think you have to, you don't know any other sources of power. And that's one of the things that I think we learn in Aikido, is that we have these other sources of power, our center, our breath, our energy, our connection to the life energy of the universe. I mean, you know, all the things that we do. And so, but, you know, golfers, most people, the ordinary person hasn't heard of this stuff, doesn't know much about it. And so, you know, they just resort to this other thing that you kind of freaked out, and they use upper body and muscle power because they don't know there's some other way to do it. And so this is where I think our practices make a big difference. And also just, you know, that philosophy, and to know that it's practical. So in my opinion, we need to have the experience that peace is powerful. I think that honestly, I actually do a seminar about peaceful power, which I think is the essence of Aikido, because I think most people talk about peace and most of us don't even believe in it. You know, it's like a last resort. You know, you go to the negotiating table, you call a truce only when brute force hasn't worked, when you haven't been able to just kill it or kill the other person or win. And so it's a last resort. And we think it's kind of weak. We think we don't have a Department of Peace. We can't even get one in America because it's all about the Department of Defense. Like that's what's going to do it. And I think we have a big job ahead to sort of really ourselves believe in peace and to help other people believe in it. And that only happens not because it's a good moral idea, but because you experience it as powerful. Like you get better results. Luke, for example, doing verbal Aikido, you get better results in a conversation or a communication or a negotiation, a peaceful way than just domineering or demeaning or degrading, not peaceful way. So if we can experience that peace is really powerful, makes a difference. I can hit the golf ball farther when I'm all connected and doing it this way than doing it this way. Well, then maybe I'm interested in it. Then maybe we can get people interested in it. So to me, that's what I think the application of Aikido is in business or leadership, is to find out, or in parenting, you know, you get better results when you do it the peaceful, harmonious, joining, blending way. You're healthier, your health is better, on and on. So, but the main point is, can we ourselves believe in peace more because we can experience it as powerful and it's effective, and in fact even gets better results in whatever it is we're trying to do.
Again, this maybe there are connotations with the word peace that are unhelpful. It seems like it's a bit wishy-washy, doesn't it? And actually real peace requires real power. Yeah, I think. So yes.
Well, and it's not just that, well, yeah, you know, I could take them out if I need to. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this connected, harmonious, we're connected to, I mean, if we're really enlightened, yeah, I mean, even a little bit in our bodies, we really get this power of the universe, and it's in me, and it's like much more powerful than my little muscles and ego self. Exactly. If we can really get that, then we go, wow, this really is, or love, you know, is the most powerful thing in the universe, force in the universe. If we really get that, it's like, no, it really is the most powerful thing. It really does work better. So that's what I'm saying. You know, it's like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, nonviolence, et cetera, that, you know, we really changed the world through nonviolent means. And, you know, but we can't just pay lip service to it or think it's a great idea. I think we really need to experience it, practice it. And I mean, O-sensei said, rely on peace. Rely on, that was one of his haiku, rely on peace to activate your manifold powers. Rely on peace. That's straight from O-sensei. And we don't. We rely on it till we don't. And then we go back to this.
That's the path.
I mean, if you look at the dictionary definition, Quentin, you started off, I think, by raising the question whether there was a mistranslation of the art of peace. And at least one sort of dictionary type definition is harmony in the absence of hostility. And that seems very close to Aikido, as we were discussing.
Yeah, yes, I kind of want to add that creating harmony out of hostility is kind of where we want to be. If we can create harmony when there's hostility there, then we're really making progress.
We have peace. Paul said he agrees with me.
Oh, I've fallen off my chair.
Well, then you had to run, so you know.
But the other thing, Quentin, just worth noting is that apparently, this is only one source, I haven't verified it. The term martial art as sort of one phrase only found currency in very modern Japan. I think the first time it got into a dictionary in Japan was about 1905. So that these historical contexts and perceptions, I think, are very important. I mean, we've all got this sort of great image of the samurai warrior, like, but the word art is quite important here, because basically after about the early 1600s, you know, when the Tokugawa shogunate started, peace broke out, and up to that point, all the fighting troops, the so-called samurai, they were battle-hardened warriors. They were killing and slaughtering every day of their lives for the previous 100 years.
Sure.
And it was very vicious. And then peace broke out. There was much less fighting. And so a lot of these things did develop as art.
Unless anybody else has something they wish to add, then I think we've had a really good rounded discussion. As I just thought I might finish with three quotes from our sensei. So let me just open it up to you guys to add anything you want to add. And if not, I'll just read them.
Can I just add one thing?
Of course.
We started off by talking about, as you come into the dojo, leaving all your sort of outside things behind you. If you take that to the next stage, you should then take the things you've gained from being in the dojo with you as you go out.
Yes, that's brilliantly said. Well said, Andrew. Yeah, and who leaves? I mean, all of us will, I'm sure, have experienced that. Nearly every session you go on the mat, you end up feeling much better than when you started. So you come in feeling tired, and you know it's been a long day, and then you're an Aikido practice and you're buzzing and you feel really great. And you know, if we could make that last for an hour or two longer than just after the session, take what we learned on the mat and practice that all the time, maybe we'd keep that feeling for longer. That's why we should take it off the mat. Okay, the real art of peace is not a sacrifice. Is not to sacrifice a single one of your warriors to defeat an enemy. Vanquish your foes by always keeping yourself in a safe and unassailable position. Then no one will suffer any losses. The way of a warrior, the art of politics, is to stop trouble before it starts. It consists in defeating your adversaries spiritually by making them realize the folly of their action. The way of the warrior is to establish harmony. And then the next one, which you'll all know really, really well. The art of peace can be summed up like this. True victory is self-victory. Let that day arrive quickly. True victory means unflinching courage. Self-victory symbolizes unflagging effort, and let that day arrive quickly. It represents the glorious moment of triumph in the here and now. And then finally, the art of peace is a form of prayer that generates light and heat. Forget about your little self, detach yourself from objects, and you will radiate light and warmth. Light is wisdom, warmth is compassion. So I kind of read those, they all kind of touched me as I read them. And the important thing for me is, you know, I hear people saying, oh, well, John Stevens was mistranslated. And I think, well, did you read the rest of the sentence? Because how could it be mistranslated when you look at the context in which it's in? So yes, for me, Aikido is the art of peace. To some degree, it's what you make it, but it offers the potential of peace. and not just in a martial sense, but in your own lives. And if you get your lives right, then you can help other people, but find inner peace as well. So it is the purpose. Jamie, did you?
Quentin, can I, first of all, thank you for just every week picking great topics, great, great guests. So just want to honor you for that. They're always so interesting, and everybody's contributions. It's really just wonderful. And also, I just want to mention, we don't quite have our date yet. It keeps changing, but we do have an upcoming session on peace camp and training across borders, actual Aikido peace projects, peacemaking, peace building projects through Aikido. So that is coming up one of these days soon. And look forward to that, because Aikido, I've really found, is a great, we have the most perfect tool in the world, or vehicle, I would say, in the world through Aikido to connect with people and create peace literally between people who've been enemies and warring. So we're going to talk about that soon.
Yeah, we will. Okay, thank you once again for just enriching conversation. And yeah, hopefully a few people will watch this after the event. So enjoy the rest of your week.
All right, thank you all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Peace out.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.